Welcome to the Books Applied podcast, presented by WSL Leadership. In this podcast, we talk about an awesome book and how to apply it to your work, sport, or life. I'm your host, Iggy Perillo. Thanks for joining me. On today's episode, we're talking about the book The Striker and the Clock on Being in the Game by Georgia Cloepfil. And I am joined by my special guest, Steve Price, also known in some circles as Skippy Steve. Thanks for joining me, Steve. I'm very excited to have you here today with me to talk about this book. I read this book because you suggested it in a forum that we were both in. I'm curious how you came across this book and how it came into your world.
I was listening to the local NPR noon program where the guy that does the program interviews various people. He was interviewing this author about her book. And one of the few tricks I picked up in life is that you can save money. And I don't even say I'm cheap, but I am thrifty. You can save money by listening to NPR and both local and national on the authors they interview about the books that they interview them on. And if you can get into the library very quickly after that show, you can get in before everybody else, and there aren't a lot of holds on it, you can get the book from the library. So I got into the library, I think just immediately after listening to this program, and I got the book on my e-reader as a library book and just started into it.
Fantastic. I also am notoriously big fan of the library and have my library copy right here in front of me right now. I had to wait longer because you had already read it. Probably this interview had already happened. And there were holds on the book, which is always a great sign to me that the book is in demand for sure out there. It's interesting that, you got it was the interview with Georgia about the book, or was it about her career? She is for folks that don't know, basically a soccer player. And I think personally her trajectory is interesting. She was at a Division III school, which is very small, no scholarships available, played soccer at a small school in Minnesota that I applied to, by the way, did not go to school there. And then later ended up playing professional soccer across Europe and Eastern Europe, it sounded like, and Korea also, and then played some professional soccer in the U.S. also, and then has since retired. So as far as I know, is not currently playing competitive professional soccer.
Right. I think she's coaching.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't sound like that she is far from the game. But was this interview that you heard about the book or about her career, or sort of a mix of both? It
was mainly about the book. You know, when these books come out, they kind of send the authors on tours to whoever will interview them and publicize the book. And this was part of that. Gotcha.
And what drew you to the book from that interview? Because I think I've also heard author interviews and been like, okay, no, I'm not interested. You know, like it happens that we're not thrilled by everything. But I know we both share an interest in the world of sports and women's sports in particular. So I can see that being part of the reason that kind of pulled you into this book. But I'm curious what drew you to that from that interview?
You know, it was partly because it was about women's sports, and we've both been involved in roller derby for forever. I have since 2005. So it's a subject that it's very dear to me. And, you know, she seemed to be such an insightful person that I just wanted to read what she had to say about being a woman athlete.
Yeah, I can see that. And I found the book fascinating in terms of what it's like to be a professional athlete in the world of soccer across Europe, back to the U.S. Like there's one section that's just like how much she got paid during each of her contracts. And the contracts are sometimes a season long. The season could be, sometimes they're short, like 3 or 4 months, or 9-month kind of seasons. And somewhere in here, it's just like, here's how much I got paid to work in Korea. Here's how much I got paid to work in Latvia. Here's how much I got paid to be in, kind of a couple different places. And that's it. That's like the whole chapter, which I thought was interesting. Like I didn't know. Oh, and it's like it'd be provided apartment, provided car, provided flights, provided this, kind of just a couple, like really like 3 or 4 sentences just to describe those contracts a little bit for a couple of them. And you're like, oh, I didn't know. I think that I mean, I do not have that bookmarked in my book right now, but I think the highest one was like $30,000 or something. It was not like $1 million contract. None of them were $100,000 for sure. I remember that, but yeah, I think there were interesting insights into the world of professional women's sports. And I mean, this book came out, I think it was published last year in 2024. But it's pretty current, right? Like I know soccer, like the women's professional, soccer has much more professional presence in the US right now. Like there are, national leagues and things, but it's been around for a long time. So yeah, did you find have any other interesting insights into the professional side of the work that you did?
Well, one of the things that really intrigued me about it was she was not playing professional soccer at the highest level. She tried out a few times for the Seattle professional team. And I remember one time she mentioned she got cut, like the last cut. She didn't make the team. So she was not one of the elite women players in the world of soccer, but she was certainly good enough to be paid professionally to play in other leagues around the world. And, some of those leagues were like one of them, I think in Australia, was a semi-professional league. So she and maybe a couple other foreign players were the only ones really being paid anything.
Right. Oh yeah. She's mentioned like her other teammates would be like, have to go to their jobs and then come back.
Right,
and like,
right.
This was sort of after,
Yeah.
in addition to their work lives, for sure.
So the struggle of that was, it was out of the limelight. It wasn't like a superstar with a lot of attention, which has its own series of stressors to deal with. But it was really good, but not the very best.
Right. Yeah. Good enough to get paid, but not.
Yeah.
I found the section, like she talks about in Australia, she's paid $30 an hour for 30 hours a week for coaching as a job. Like, so her side job was to be a coach while she was playing this soccer league. And she got flights and a homestay. So like living in someone's house. Sweden was $500 a month plus housing, flights, lunch, and dinner every day. Korea was about $37,000 per year with housing, all meals and flights. Lithuania, $1,200 a month, housing, flights, 1 meal per day, and a car. And Norway was $1,685 per month, housing and flights. And you're like, yeah, that's actually, I mean, I don't know what the cost of living is in many of these places, but I suspect the Scandinavian countries I hear is more expensive, perhaps, if you're trying to find housing or if you're trying to find a place to live. Not a ton of money in this.
Right.
And so you have to be really dedicated. And I think that's what, to me, came out through this book, is just the amount of dedication to this sport that she obviously loves, obviously super invested in. We'll travel around. We'll get some amenities. There's some, draw, like, oh, at least, there's some money or some housing or a meal or, kind of pieces of it are there for her. But she's really doing it because she wants to and is super committed to doing it, which I think is what you're saying about this sort of, not the super pro level, but sort of this second tier. And she said like once she was in whatever division and she was trying to get to the next division, like with her team, like some places like the teams move up and down divisions a little bit. And so she kept trying to like work her way up, and it involved moving to a new place. And then she's in another like national division and trying to sort out that one, and then moving to another country and another national division. There wasn't sort of a global sense, of the teams, because the global senses are national teams. So she wasn't on the national team essentially.
Right.
I think I also love the organization of this book. I don't know if you had any thoughts on how it is structured and organized.
Well, the first time I read the book, I was just totally taken with the content. All the information she gave us, like you were just talking about, playing in these non-super major leagues, but playing in all that went into being a woman athlete. It was really just riveting. Second time I read through it, and I read through it just in the past week or so to prepare for this discussion, I was taken with what a wonderful writer she is. It was, I kind of sat back and I go through a chapter and realized she was doing some very clever things in expressing herself. The largest was the book's chapters are divided up into 90 minutes, like
Exactly.
a soccer game.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch that at
And
first. I'm like, wait, this chapter is called Halftime. Hold on a minute, right? It took a while for me
right,
to sort that out.
and some of them are only like 2 or 3 pages long, and I don't think there's any that are 10 pages or more.
I think they're all pretty short, but there's 90 of
Yeah,
them. So,
yeah. And she just did what got me most the second read was just how well she wrote. There's she mentioned something early in the book from when she was a girl playing in high school, and then later she mentions the same thing when she's hanging up her spikes, and that was a teacher handed her back a paper after she had made kind of a bad play in a very important game, and said, "A girl who can write like this doesn't need to worry about goal kicks." And then comes back later at the end of the book, the same teacher sent her a message. I was wrong when I said that. It's worried about goal kicks that made you the writer that you are.
yeah,
And
yeah.
there was a lot to that because it's not just knowing all these wonderful things, which she knew. And she refers to a book by Tracy Austin, the tennis player who was a great tennis player, but who wrote a lousy book, according to her. And she also refers to other books that are extremely well written by athletes. I think Andre Agassi was one that she was very impressed with. Uh, you've got to have, you don't just have to have the ability to say things, you got to have something to say. And she had, with her life in soccer, she had some very insightful, important things to say involving what it is to be a woman athlete. That I think was just a beautiful combination for her. And it was reflected in that later comment by the teacher. It's not just that you can write, but you do care about goal kicks.
Yeah, that level of investment totally, definitely shows throughout this. And I agree. The writing is so engaging. And she doesn't talk about, like, rarely is she actually talk about being on the field and playing the game. This is like everything surrounding being on the game. Like, there's one chapter that's like, here are the 3 gold kicks I ever missed. And she like gets into each of them and like what was going on, what happened. Like, she's like, these are burned in my memory, like I'm going to remember it. She also has this beautiful part where she talks about, in the beginning, she talks about visualizing and like kind of subconsciously visualizing the game that she's going to be playing that day. Like, some of these feel a little bit like diary entries or journal entries for, like, when she's at different places on different teams. So she's doing her visualizing. Then much later in the book, she overhears some people talking about visualizing, and the one person's like, well, the important part is you need to visualize, like, if you're there, like looking through your eyes. And she's like, crap, I was visualizing from like above, looking down on the field. Have I been doing it wrong this entire time? This is very funny, kind of self-referential, but in a really endearing sort of way. Like, oh, like, we are getting into what she's thinking and what she's feeling and what's going on for her, but without it being like, oh, and then this other boring thing happened. Like, it's
Right, right.
it's really a lot about the relationships that she has, like with either a tough coach or her teammates or her body. I think like those are sort of different pieces come back over and over again. And with like this teacher, right? That's that relationship with that teacher that, she remembered as a high schooler and then comes back, years and years later, and kind of closes the loop on that. But that same relationship mattered the whole time to her. I think, what do you think, or what did you find to be the most useful parts of this book for you, or useful or enlightening parts for you personally?
How she dealt with pain and with the physical limitations and the compromises she made to be able to play. Like, doctors gave her shots to make pain go away, which had long-lasting detrimental effects on her body, which she was sort of dealing with at the end of the book. But the process she went through to do that really struck me. It reminded me of I was talking outside of a regional roller derby tournament with one of the one of the Rose City skaters. In fact, it's one, I won't say her name, but I referred this book to her,
Oh, okay,
and
great.
she loved it.
Oh, good.
She's long since retired and has had some physical disabilities, but I was talking to her, and she was so dedicated to roller derby that she had every waking minute accounted for by either nourishment or training. And also, she had to kind of make a living while she was at it.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like,
Roller derby for folks out there is a very much an amateur sport. No, people are not paid to engage in this sport.
right.
So just to clarify, yeah.
But it just takes all their life.
Oh, people are so dedicated. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and they just don't have much in the way of free time.
Mm.
And this woman was the epitome of that. And because we were talking about some other things she might have been able to do training, and it was just abundantly clear there was no possibility. She just didn't have any other minutes in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And what the writer of this book, Ms. Cloepfil, talked about was that kind of dedication and making those kind of decisions. Okay, you've got, 18 hours a day that you're awake, and you have 3 spare minutes. So what are you going to have to give up to do something else to make yourself a better soccer player? It's the same thing that roller derby skaters go through all the time. What am I going to put my effort into to make me a better skater, or to make me a better teammate? Or am I going to have to switch teams? Am I going to have to only play on one team instead of 2 teams? It just struck me as how dedicated that life is, and how there are necessary sacrifices, and people have to make sacrifices, and they have to make decisions on what they're going to do.
I think
one of the things that she talks about was later on in her life, a doctor was talking to her about, well, do you really want these shots now? Do you want to be able to bend down and pick up your grandkids? And I think she said, that's not my concern at the moment. But throughout the time leading to that, the doctors hadn't even mentioned that.
right.
I think she kind of knew it was out there, but not in stark terms. And she made those sacrifices to essentially make herself a better player. And at all, to kind of use an analogy of baseball, she made herself a very, very, very good AAA minor league baseball player. She was not a major league player.
Right. And I would say, in addition to physical sacrifice and time sacrifice, it was geographic. She moved all over the world.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens, I think, on a scale in the world of roller derby, where people will move places to play in certain leagues, or to, will move across the country. I would say across the world, like there are people out there who have moved internationally in order to play the sport of roller derby. Again, an amateur sport. Like it is a competitive, really, obviously very invested sport, but not even getting paid, right? People are going to move and invest, physically and mentally and emotionally, their time, their effort. And I think there is something to be said for that level of dedication to really make you real. Like, I think there's 2 pieces too. One side, it can seem fanatical. You're like, whoa, you gave up so many other things. You have no social life. You blah, 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 blah. Like, you're so focused on your sport. That's a lot. Like, do you have friends? On the other side, you're like, wow, what am I doing with my day that I don't play a competitive major sport, and I don't, accomplish physical training for my body the same way someone else does, who also has a job, who also, has other demands of their time, family, things like that. So I can see both, like, too fanatical, but also like, what about the rest of us who are like bumbling along, like, oh, we could do better,
Yeah.
Are there other pieces of the book that you found, that inspired interesting thought for you?
Well, some things at the end of the book made me think back to when I was in college. I was one of the world's most mediocre English majors.
One
Just
of the worlds. That's saying a
one,
lot.
yeah. And there was a line that I had to read from, I think it was T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. And the line was, April is the cruelest month.
Hmm.
And I really didn't know what the heck that meant.
Hmm.
At the time, I thought, well, maybe it's the cruelest month because it leads to the fall when everything dies anyway. And then years later, when I had kids, one of my kids was, my older son was starting to play Little League. So I had to go out and, play catch with him. And it happens in the springs. I think it was April.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we start throwing the ball, and my shoulder hurts, and I can't throw the ball like I could when I was 12 or 15.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's entirely different. And I realized then why April was the cruelest month.
Oh, because physically, your physical demands ramp up and makes you aware of your
Right.
changing physical ability.
And your
Interesting.
mortality.
Ah, okay.
It's and she has a more insightful experience herself because she had more to experience. But at the end, when she talks about retirement and your body giving up on you and her knees not holding up anymore and these toes that hurt to put her her cleats on, it just made me think of that. Because she really expressed that so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she said like by the end she's like, "Well, I still run. I still do some
Mm-hmm.
sprints. Like I don't think it does not sound like." And she also described her retirement, which I thought was interesting. She's like, "Well, I didn't like retire. I didn't like send out a big memo or whatever. I just didn't take a contract." And she went to graduate
Right.
school, so
Right.
she makes this plan to go to graduate school for writing, creative writing, I believe, and that's sort of just another choice she makes. Like, what am I going to do next season? And I've definitely worked this seasonal lifestyle. We're like, okay, I have this season laid out. What's my next season? What's my next season? Kind of moving back and forth between locations or types of work or just a seasonal type of experience. And she writes about how she made this decision to go to graduate school. And she's like, oh, I suddenly knew what I was doing next season because I had graduate school starting. Like, she knows when the start date is. And so she's like, I just didn't take another contract. And she talks about this repeatedly in the book. Like, her contract will be up and she's like, cool, where's my next contract? What's next? There's this sort of just like a little bit of sort of lingering anxiety with like, well, what's the next one? What's the next one? Because she had to constantly be looking on the lookout for the next place to try out, or the next team, or the next contract, the next location, the next part of the world she went to, whatever it was. So this huge wide net of, she could have gone anywhere in the world. Geographically, she was, it seems like she worked mostly in the Northern Hemisphere, but like, that's really about it, right? Like, she could have gone.
Well, she was in Australia
anywhere.
for a while.
Oh, no, you're right. You're right. She did spend time in Australia. So not even, like, literally entire world possibilities of where she could be going. But that level of anxiety, and I think that also speaks to, like, sort of her, like, I feel like I have to do air quotes every time I say retirement, because she's like, well, I just didn't, because people will ask her, like, oh, are you still playing? And she's like, oh, no, I'm blah, 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 I'm in school or doing this or doing that, kind of describing other things that she's up to now. Because it wasn't like some big, like, I'm goodbye, professional world. And it makes you think, like, oh, she's still holding out for, like, another contract. And there's this piece of her that doesn't want to let go of this possibility. Meanwhile, her body is wrecked in certain ways, or she talks about the pain and the physical demands, and she's out running and she's, staying fit, and she's obviously invested in writing, like wrote and created this whole book, and does other writing and things. But it sort of makes you wonder. I think there's this piece where it's sort of, she doesn't want to let go of this experience. And obviously it's a huge part of her life. She just wrote this whole book about this experience for her. Yeah, it just seems fascinating to me, like, where she's at with, like, if someone offered her another contract, would she take it? It's kind of this question I had in the back of my mind.
She did. There's a reference in the book which I found very interesting, because in the book she talks about how with her teammates, the very few of them that she carried on any kind of friendship outside of soccer, even though they may have gotten along great in soccer and traded jokes and things like that. And she talks about coaches and managers and agents and good coaches, bad coaches, good agents, bad agents. And after she had unofficially retired. She was, I think, working on cleaning out a swimming pool somewhere as part of her job, and she got a call from an agent,
Mm-hmm.
and the agent wasn't. He was just calling to catch up, just to say hi and see how she was doing. He wasn't trying to be an agent for her. And she said he was a longtime agent, almost a friend.
Ah, right, right.
And that
Yeah.
almost really,
Mm.
it made me think of how going through that whole, the process of being a professional athlete, she had to kind of set up these walls
Mm-hmm.
between her personal friendship feelings and the people she necessarily had to deal with. Even if they were perfectly nice people,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
weren't going to come inside the house to be a friend. They were
Yeah.
always going to be outside the house.
Well, I think they had a term, like they were ephemeral in a certain sense. She knew she was with this team, and she like followed some of the folks, and it's yeah, she sounded like she was on amicable terms with most folks. I think there's definitely one coach where she's like not on amicable terms with, which is a great story. But
Yeah,
the like for the most part, she cares about them, and they come and talk to her. Like she has these like just super pleasant, very friendly interactions. But I think there's this part where she knows like, oh, when this contract's up, I could be anywhere in the world, like there's not that depth of friendship maybe. And I think
right.
another spot she talks about how she has very few people she's in touch with from high school or even college, like those just doesn't have those contacts in her life, or she's not close with these folks that she was close with at the
Right.
time.
And there were some good moments with some of them. Like I think it was a Korean soccer player who was pregnant,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and she came in to tell her that she was pregnant and obviously wasn't going to be able to play and was going to be off for a year. And she brought a handful of headbands.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a beautiful scene. That's
Yeah,
such a
which
beautiful
was
scene.
a very touching thing to
Yeah.
do. Uh, but
Well, and they have this exchange where they're like, "Oh, Georgia knows that this other player is going to have to like step away from the game for a little bit,"
Mhm.
and it's like, "Well, is she going to come back or not, or like what's going to happen? Like, is her career over or whatever?" And hands her all these headbands that she would wear during the games, and so Georgia's like, "That's really touching, right?" Sort of like just like letting go of the game in a very physical way, like a sense of like,
Mhm.
oh, these headbands are like, I don't need them because I'm not going to be playing the sport for a bit. And Georgia's questioning, like, is this the end of soccer for her? And like for her own career mortality, career duration,
Right.
like what would be the end for me? And I think this is also where she's talking about her physical ailments in Korea, where she's getting injections in her hips to numb out her lower back because she had a bulging disc, and so she's still playing. And like just all these like invasive and intensive physical aspects of the game that she's going through. Meanwhile, this other player is tearful, right? It's sad, like is just so torn up about leaving the game for forever. But then I think there's some redemption later where Georgia sees this player on the Korean national team later, and you're like,
Right.
okay, she
Right.
made it through. She came back, whatever. She stuck with it,
Mhm.
or and that was her goal, was to always be on the national team. But she knew that this having a kid was going to derail, like push back her goals a little bit. It was
Mhm.
super like specific, and you're like, oh, that is what happens. Like this is how it is going to work for you as an athlete, that you're not going to be able to compete continue your trajectory of competing at higher and higher levels. But she came back and did it, which I think is very cool. What would you say are the most useful parts of this book?
I would say, well, I'll put this in a little context, so it's not just you know a worldwide context. But one of the reasons that I put it on this Slack thing that we're both on is because it it has so much about dealing with the physical challenges, not only of becoming a skilled athlete, but putting up with the pain, putting up with the, losing contact with your friends, to have to travel to other places. That I think would be really meaningful to, especially like roller derby skaters, and other, other athletes too, just to kind of give them guidance as to, well, other people have been through this, and this is how this woman did it, and maybe these are things that I should bear in mind as I go through this myself. So I think it's a good life teaching / role modeling for especially women athletes.
Absolutely. I think, and with that, I think, just as you were speaking, I was thinking about sort of the reality check of like, we're not all in the A league. We're not all at the top of our game, but this is the work and the experience of what it's like to be, a competitive woman athlete in a field that is not super recognized. Soccer, more and more recognized. There's more recognition, there's more development, there's more teams or whatever. Roller derby actually too, growing. There's more recognition in teams, but it's not $1 million contract kind of gig, either of them.
Right.
Or at the level that Georgia was at. I mean, I don't actually know for pro women's soccer these days, but the level that you're at is, I think she just embodies that in such an interesting way of like embracing all these pieces of the experience together. That is great. I love it. Well, thanks, Skippy Steve, for coming to talk with me today. Any other lasting, burning thoughts that we need to make sure we share about this very, very cool book?
None that I won't think of until after I've turned the computer off.
Absolutely, 100%. That's what happens every time. So thanks so much for coming to talk with me today about this book. Thanks for introducing me to this book. I think it was such an engaging read. I read it in basically one night almost because it flies along fast. I mean, there's 90 teeny little chapters and halftime and an epilogue, and like a couple other little tiny chapters that go with it. Oh, there's the time stoppage time. There's like a little section about that too. So there's I found it really fascinating and really engaging and really, I think I like your perspective around just explaining what it is to give that kind of sacrifice to something that you really are invested in and believe in and really want to be a part of. So great. Thanks so much for coming and talking with me today.
Thank you for asking. Thanks for talking to me in a way where I learned more about the book.
Well, I hope I have too through our conversation. I don't hope. I know I have too through our conversation today. Thanks very much for being here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Books Applied podcast. I hope you enjoyed getting to know a new book and learning how to apply its ideas to make your work, sport, or life a little bit more awesome. For more leadership education-related content, including conflict management checklists, invitations to a fun free lunch that happens monthly, upcoming classes, webinars, and mastermind groups, please head over to wslleadership.com. Thanks, and have a great day.